In this episode, you're going to be hearing from my client, Kim Frost. I met Kim networking at Seattle Executive Association, a group that I just became a member of, and I met her on my very first meeting. She came up to me, we talked, and she wanted to start a podcast. She's been in business for over 2 decades and wanted something new to be able to market her business, and podcasting really stood out to her. In this episode, we talk about why, after over 2 decades, she decided to start a podcast, what it's doing for her business, and the structure that she follows. I love working with Kim, and you're going to love this episode. Her podcast is called Hire Power, Hire Power, and she talks all about hiring and recruiting. Welcome to the Podcast Cafe, where we're serving up everything you need to know about podcasting, from tips, stories, and strategies for podcasters from podcasters. I'm your host, Haley Hayhurst, the founder of Espresso Podcast Production, a full-service podcast agency helping business owners, creatives, and thought leaders launch and grow their shows. Whether you're just starting out or want to take your podcast to the next level, this is the place for you. Each week, we'll dive into practical tips, actionable strategies, and of course, stories from other podcasters so that you can build up a podcast that you love and that works for your business. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's get started. Welcome to the Podcast Cafe. Hey Kim, welcome into the Podcast Cafe. I'm so excited to talk all things higher power with you today.
Thank you. I'm excited too. My first time being interviewed.
Oh my gosh. Well, my first question that I have to know, I ask this to all my guests, is what is your go-to coffee order?
Oh my God, that's a good one. And, I'm going to tell you this story. It changes.
Okay.
But I did not start drinking coffee until I was 29.
Mm.
And I lived in Chicago, Starbucks. I taught like 15 aerobic classes. And my friend was like, oh my God, you got to do a latte. So he had me do a skim hazelnut latte with sugar. Because I love the smell of coffee, but I hate the way it tastes. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, oh, this is really good. And I remember once my friend had to take an aspirin. And he's like, oh, let me take a drink of your coffee. And he took a drink of my coffee and he spit it out and he said, it's disgusting what you do to coffee. So then I did like the soy lattes. Yeah. Then I did the oat lattes. And I did one, my favorite for the longest time was a lavender latte. And I love it. I would say my milk would be oat, but now it's probably just like 2%.
Yeah.
But every morning I have an Americano.
Okay. Delish.
It's evolved. I'm very complex.
It's evolved. That's so funny. What did you do to coffee?
I know. He was like, this is disgusting.
That is so funny. Yeah. No, I love that. I love hearing everyone's orders, and I love an Americano too. I feel like, but I like the taste of coffee. Like, love it, obviously, with my brand, but yes. I have to. So we're here to talk all about your podcast, Hire Power. Do you want to start off by telling us why you started it? And for the listeners, when I met you, you were like, Haley, I don't listen to podcasts, but I know I want to start one. So tell us that story too.
Well, I've never listened to a podcast before. I don't travel in my car. I've had a home office since 2006. And when I walk my dogs or when I run, I don't do any music. It's just kind of my Zen time. That's my meditation. And so I was thinking of ways to expand my business. Like, we are a North American firm. So we've recruited all over the U.S., including Canada. Lately, it's just been the U.S. And so when I started my own business, I really didn't have a big Seattle client base because my clients were all over the country. Mm-hmm. So just everything that's happened with the pandemic, with what's happening with the global economy and the supply chain, I said, how do I expand my reach besides, picking up the phone and calling and saying, hey, this is what we do, or writing a blog. I'm not a fan of writing. I would rather, get on the phone, get on and talk to people live. That's where my strengths are. So it really is to expand my reach of clients and companies around the US. And I feel like I have a lot to say to really help leaders grow, because we're hired by our clients to help grow their companies by hiring specific positions, people.
Hmm.
And so I do a lot of coaching with leaders. People think, oh, it's really easy to interview, or, I don't need any training on that. So I thought, okay, a podcast would be a really fun reach. And I wanted to keep it a little bit light and add a little humor to it. And then I met you. So all the synergies aligned.
Yeah, and I'm loving the stories that you're sharing on your podcast because, I mean, I know when leaders are expanding their teams or need to find the right hires, like, I know that it can be hard to find the right person. That's just what I've heard from, across the board in this space. But hearing how you kind of approach it in a different way, I'm loving. And I also love when you tell the stories of moments that you had to coach your clients.
Mm-hmm.
So you bring this like no BS, no fluff approach to hiring and helping your clients find the right person. How did you get to this? Have you always had this voice?
I guess you'd have to ask my mom. Both my parents were entrepreneurs. They had their own business. I was just talking to someone today, coaching them about attire. And, one of the things that he said was, I really appreciate it because I know that you will say the hard things. And it's not that I enjoy it. I mean, I hate the word confrontation, but as I talked about in my last podcast that you and I worked on is, we have to look at feedback as not anything personal or attack, but it's all about growth. And managers, we don't use that term as much as leaders, right? Because people need leaders. They don't need someone to manage them. They need somebody to help them lead. And I'm not saying that everybody has to climb the corporate ladder and, be a C-level and manage huge teams. People can be individual contributors and be experts at what they do, but you no matter what position you have in life, you have to lead. You have to lead people to get them to some place, some goal, and get everybody on the same page.
Yeah.
And so I think I've also been encouraged. I think I told you I had a client, they were considering me, my boutique firm, and the number one retained executive search firm in the world. And one of the things that he said is, how are you different? How are you the same? And what I said is, how I'm different is I will tell you things that others won't. It will be the truth. And as I like to quote Nick Anderson from One Accord, truth with compassion, because I never mean it. And there's nothing mean or ill intended out of it. It's just, I want to help somebody. And sometimes it doesn't land well because sometimes people don't want to be helped. And again, they get defensive.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
can't change. Again, I can adjust but usually those people, clients or candidates that don't want to hear and aren't about growth, they usually don't work with us on a long-term basis.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, the ones that do want to hear that and appreciate it do work with you long term. And I think it's better to have those sort of clients than ones that don't want the real truth.
Yeah, because again, think about it is I'm also placing somebody. So I'm taking that person and we guarantee our hires. So why would I guarantee a hire if they're not coachable or they don't want to grow? And the
Hmm.
same aspect is why would we work for a client that doesn't want to grow? And why would I want to bring someone into that atmosphere that doesn't want, to work for a leader that doesn't want to grow and be open to feedback? It's
Absolutely.
it's a, it's a delicate situation. It's a lot of times, balancing egos.
As you said in one of your episodes, the
Mhm.
ego behind the hire. And
Ugh. Yeah.
Yeah. And
But
you've been doing,
as I say, we all put on our pants the same way, right? There's no trickiness. There's, it's we have a lot more similarities than there are differences.
yeah. And you've been doing this for, was it 24 years?
Yeah, 24, 25 years. I
I
can't
love
believe it.
that.
Over
I
two
know.
decades.
That's incredible, Kim. So, thinking back to what you were doing like before the podcast, I mean, podcasting really wasn't around 24 years ago. What other ways, in the past have you used to get your message across or get clients?
And that's a good question. Luckily, all my business has been referrals. So I
Mm,
started out in agency recruiting, and it was contingency. So that's where I cut my teeth, and they trained people that didn't have any experience, and it was a great company, and I had great training. But then I went inside, and I was a corporate recruiter. The story is I was hired by my best client, so I got to meet a ton of people, different industries, all over the globe. And when I decided to go out on my own, I had all of those folks reach out to me. In fact, today I just got a call from somebody that I haven't talked to in 5 years. And they were probably my marquee client for 10 years. I helped him grow his office from 13 to over 1,000 people on the West Coast. And it's been 6 years since we talked, and he's in a completely different industry, different path. And he thought of me and said, "Hey, listen, this is a really different hire. Can you do it?" And so that's usually how we get our business. I also got a great client because I tried to recruit the, him.
mm,
So I reached out, and because, we go and we find the candidates. We don't post jobs. We
okay.
develop a target. We look at what do you call those personas? So we develop a persona of what this ideal candidate will look like. And I reached out to him. I don't like to make assumptions, titles. I don't care about titles. And he happened to be one of the owners. And he said, "Well, I'm not interested in leaving, but I really like your approach, and we need some help hiring." And they became another great client. I think I hired 5 or 6 of their leaders. So
That's amazing.
that's another way I get. And then once I hire people, they go in and they are building out their team. So so they know how we work from a candidate perspective. So they understand it, and they appreciate our approach and their experience, and so they'll hire me from when they're the client.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, part of that is, well, that's so funny. That guy was probably flattered. He was like, okay, Kim has great taste if she's reaching out to me, so let's hire her.
Yeah.
But I love that. I mean, relationship building and just being bold about reaching out. I hear that a lot from people in business, especially, I don't know, around, younger business owners, like not wanting to reach out to anyone and just wanting to attract people in through marketing. But that's a different approach than what you're doing, right? You're going out there to find the people that you are placing at or like recruiting from. So, what tips do you have for just being bold in business?
It's funny because people are so afraid of the phone. And, REI did this one research project probably 20 years ago where they followed this young couple out, and they were sitting next to each other at dinner, and they weren't having conversation, but they were texting each other. And I just that concerns me about lack of communication and being able to, one is formulate your thoughts, hear other
Mm,
opinions, and not be so take everything so personally. So that's concerning. So I always say pick up the phone. It if someone slams the phone down on you, who cares? They don't know you. You'll never see them again. However, you may run into them again when they need something and not knowing that they did that, because I've had that happen too. But there is no there is no downside.
yeah.
You just have to do it. You just have to get on the phone, call, but what is your compelling statement? I don't like it where, "Hey, I'm just calling to check in. I'm busy. You're busy. You're working. You don't need a, hey, I'm calling to check in." But it's, listen, I want to hear how you've been, how your team is, and I want to talk to you about what I'm seeing in the market, some trends. And most great leaders will want to hear that. And on the flip side, with candidates, who wouldn't, Haley, I'm curious, how are you? Not, I shouldn't say that. I just, are you satisfied in your job? Are your goals, are your needs getting met? And why wouldn't you want to hear what's out there? Because one is that's how you find advancement. Because the worst case scenario is you say thanks, but no thanks. I've got a great job. Two is, wow, I never even thought of that. And three is, it's great for you to have that market data.
I think that that's a great approach to just business in general.
It's all about developing relationships, and you can't develop relationships through a text. And when you do it through social media, right, you're talking to almost like an anonymous audience. Okay, so you have 1 billion followers. Well, you really don't know them. And so you have to create that connection, because it really is about connection. And especially after the pandemic, right? We saw so many case and studies about, mental illness and mental health just skyrocketing after. It's because we as humans, it's innate in us. We need to have that connection.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one way to build connection is having guests on your podcast, which you just had your first guest on your show. Congrats.
Thank you. I heard from him. He just said, Kim, because I just listened to the podcast. He goes, you know what I'm going to say? I hate the sound of my voice. Everyone does, right? But he was really excited about it. And like I said, he's one of my favorite leaders.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I mean, I think that's such a important part that you brought up of like you can't build relationships without actually talking to someone, whether it's and I think a lot of people think that they can, and that's hard.
Tell me how. I'd love to hear.
Same. And I think one thing that people struggle with podcasting is we put out episodes and we don't always hear what people have to say, right? Like, because it is that one-to-many type of platform. And it can be discouraging sometimes if you're not weekly hearing like from people of what they loved about it, what they learned. It can be discouraging. But I think going back to your point of having those relationships, it makes it a lot easier to do these marketing things that you might not hear from people right away.
And I think too, it was like when people were telling me, "Oh, you should blog. You need to blog." Well, I don't enjoy it, and the thing about my podcast now is, first of all, I'm having a blast, and two is, even if I didn't get a ton of feedback, or even if I don't have a lot of followers, I love it when people say, "Hey, Kim, I listened to your podcast, and it would never be applicable that we hire your firm, but thank you because I got a lot of tips on how to make a great candidate experience." So I think that, as long as you can, I believe that I have some value to add and I'm enjoying it. So, that's really the intention, right? It has to be authentic and genuine. It was funny. I'll tell you this is I got a note on LinkedIn about this woman saying, "Hey, listen to your podcast. It's great. We'd love to have you on our podcast." And I was like, "Oh, great." And I said, "I'd love to hear about what it is that you're looking for. Why me?" And she's like, "Okay, well, I'm going to have someone reach out to you to, just set up a quick call on what we do." Great. So get the invitation. And then he sends me a thing about, okay, here's the outline of what we're going to talk about. And I said, well, wait a minute. First is I want to understand who you are and why before we dive into it. And I want to be prepared. And so I asked them, I said, well, tell me a little bit about, one is why me? He was like, well, you're a founder. I'm like, okay, well, besides being a founder, you've got a lot of founders out there. And I'm going to circle back to that answer in a second. And then I asked him, well, how did you get into this? And why are you doing this? And he said, I wanted the flexibility and I want to do quick hits where I can make as much money as possible. And the reason that they invite people to their podcast is because they hope to turn them into clients. So to me, I was like, that is so disingenuous. And obviously I didn't book my appointment to be on his podcast, but those are ulterior motives and they're not genuine. And I think that does come through, and I don't know how successful you will be.
Wow. Yeah. I've heard that in the past too, of other people saying that they've had similar experiences on podcasts. And I mean, everyone wants to monetize their podcast in some way. I don't think that should be your first goal.
Right.
And also, your guests shouldn't be your monetization plan. It should be
Right.
the people that are, listening, or the people that your guests will introduce you to. But if you're only getting founders to make money, wow, that's a little surprising that they were that open about it.
Well, and I think he wasn't as direct about saying that, but when I kept, I was asking the questions, well, tell me about this and that. But,
Yeah.
when and you know me, I'm a recruiter, right? So one is I love asking questions because I love learning about people and I love hearing people's story. So well, tell me how you got here. Like you and I, when we talked, when we went out for drinks, how did you get here, Haley? And when he told me it was about the flexibility and the quick hit for money, I was that will never last because you'll run across the street for an extra $10. I always say you have to do what you love and the money will follow. Because I know people that have come to me and said, Kim, well, in fact, Robert, when he left his company, the founder offered him over 7 figures to stay. And he said no.
Wow.
Because again, it doesn't matter about the money. Money can't, it's so many other things such as culture and really being genuine and authentic. And I do believe that not everybody has to absolutely love what they do. We all have different motivations. But I think people can really see when someone's being authentic and genuine. Do you really want to do business with somebody that is just looking at dollar signs and eventually will target you to try to sell them, their product?
Yeah, no, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I was invited onto a podcast not too long ago, and I filled out the application to be on it, booked a time, and then at the last page it was like, do you want to add on, the transcript and some graphics for $47? And I was like, don't you need that for your business? Like, why am I paying for that? I thought it was the craziest thing, but
Yep.
that I think a lot of podcasters do have those ulterior motives. And that's something I want to encourage people not to do with the podcast. But I think it makes sense in their mind of, okay, this is how I'm going to make money from it. But
Right.
there's a lot of other things that you could do to have the podcast work for you. So, I mean, when you started, what did you want to achieve with the show?
Again, to really help people develop as leaders and to help them grow, give them something to think about. And also, I've got some good stories to tell. I mean, people say, oh my God, you should write a book. And going back to when everyone was blogging, like I'm, yes, I could have blogged. It would have helped my brand. It would have helped my business. But like, I can't do it because I don't enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love what you do. So I'm glad that
Thank
you
you.
started Higher Power. And I love the name too. Do you want to tell the story about how you came up with that name?
I was just going through looking at the things that I want to talk about, right? So the goal is helping people become better leaders and be happy. So when you think of higher, HIGHER, right? You elevate yourself, right?
Yeah.
But then play on words with, okay, well, that's what we do. We hire, HIRE. So I thought that was kind of clever and it fit a little bit with my brand and the whole tongue in cheek and hopefully not taking yourself too seriously.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. And then, when we met, that's when you decided, like, okay, this is what we're going to do. Do you just want to share a little bit about, like, I don't know, the launching process, like coming up with all of it?
Well, you were really instrumental in that because I'm like, what am I going to talk about? And that's the other thing too, is I say, well, I don't have really, what do I have to say? I want to make sure again that I have to say something of value versus just to talk. And so I wouldn't have known how to do a thing. I mean, I wouldn't even have known what platform to use, to turn on a mic. I mean, I do Zoom all the time and I think I'm a pretty good Zoomer, but you really were helpful on helping me come up with topics. And then it's doing the research. It's okay, what are some of the hot topics right now with leadership and hiring? Who's talking about what? Who are the podcasters, that are talking about recruiting, hiring, and leading? And a lot of them had a little bit of a different focus. more about the actual hire than helping leaders develop so they can hire and see the right talent. And so it's a combination of your magic and just doing the research.
Oh,
There's
thank
there's
you.
there's nothing, again, everyone's looking for like that magic bullet or like, oh my God, here's the one thing that, that you can do to, oh my God, this is the one thing you can do and I'm going to make $1 million. Or this is the one thing I can do to meet my perfect match, my perfect mate, my perfect match.
Yeah,
And there is nothing. It's just hard work, persistence, and being open to trying new things.
absolutely. No, I absolutely love that. Well, Kim, I have some rapid fire questions for
Oh
you,
boy.
but is there anything you want to share before we get into those?
Mm, no, I think, again, we talked about it. Understand your why and don't overthink things. Just go. And I'm always a big believer of, you can't be the expert in everything. Don't be afraid to ask for help because, again, you're only as smart as the people who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
And I say the same thing about friendships. At any point in life, stop and look at your life and look at the friends in your life because that's a direct reflection of who you are. Same thing about leadership. Who do you have surrounding yourself? Because the biggest compliment is saying, wow, for me, I'll tell you and I'll close on this and then you can rapid fire. So it's one of my favorite stories and I love, of course, I still talk to him, but candidate I reached out to wasn't looking for work, uh, hired him for the client that I told you about that just reached out to me today and I haven't talked to him for 6 years, and whole new position, new market, just a wonderful human being. In fact, he was going to turn down the offer. And I said, okay, hey, wait a minute. Let's look at this. So we talked through things. He retired with $22 million.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah. So
Wow.
that's something I think, again, that goes to show is, you just have to go out there and do it.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. You do. I love that story. Thanks for sharing.
Oh, he's awesome too. We still talk today.
That's incredible. Okay, typically in this portion, I ask people about, their podcast that they love, but I'm going to tailor this a little more to you since you're not like a podcast lover, right?
Mhm.
So tell me, I want to like ask more about LinkedIn in this because that's a platform that you use a lot. So do you think every business should be on LinkedIn?
I will say yes, because it really is the only platform right now. I know that. So, but it's also for what? Is it because, are you looking for new clients? Are you looking for a job? Or are you looking for candidates?
Hmm.
I think that there are other platforms that are coming up that speak to each of those different needs, but LinkedIn right now is the tool that is the most mainstream and the most used for all those three different things.
Yeah.
Everyone has to have a social media presence. I know many people, including my brother, they don't have a social media presence, and that's okay because what they do, they don't need it. But whatever you do, whoever you are, people are going to go and they're going to do some research on you and they'll look at a lot of different platforms. To me, I don't recruit off of Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or Pinterest because I just
Hmm.
don't think it's appropriate.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I
But
agree with that.
some of my clients do.
That's so interesting. Okay, my next question is more about from the candidate side. I have a lot of friends right now who are in the job search.
Mhm.
In LinkedIn, what do you think is important for them to know?
Well, there's a couple things. One is you have to have a professional picture. So don't have a picture up there with your kitty cat. And as much as you love your kids, that's not the time and place for it. I think you have to be careful about what you post. I always
Hmm.
say things, keep personal things off, keep political things off, keep religious things off. It just gets way too hairy and you can isolate yourself. I think your LinkedIn profile needs to speak to what you want to do, not necessarily what you've done. So let's just say, I have been a nurse practitioner and I want to shift into project management. So your LinkedIn profile, you could have a blurb about, prior career, but, focus on the qualities that maybe are transferable to get you into project management. So, Don't get fancy with titles. Titles rarely transcend in other organizations. So sometimes people make up really creative titles. Be simple with that. And make sure you talk about your accomplishments. Don't talk about your experiences. What have you accomplished? Why would someone reading your profile, Haley, pick up the phone, read your profile, and go, oh my God, I got to talk to Haley? She would be perfect as someone that can run our company's podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I love that. Okay. My next question for you is you are also an adapter of AI. What are your favorite AI tools that you're using right now?
Okay, well, the easiest one is ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
But I listened to a gentleman, and I want to go back, and there are so many AI tools out there, and they are different tools for different, like putting your PowerPoint together, doing your research, being creative. I think that I would tell people to limit their tools to a few, because otherwise you're living in AI and you can get too much data where it can be overwhelming. But I do think what I love about AI is it's a teacher, it's a mentor. I don't have to agree with it, but I'll type something in there and I'll be like, okay, help me phrase X. Want it to be polite, want it to be professional, but I want it to be pretty direct.
Yeah.
And it's a good tool, especially when you're a solopreneur and entrepreneur. I think it's a great partner.
Yeah.
It's not the end all be all.
No, it's
Nothing.
not. But
Yeah.
it's great for like you can't hire from AI, right? So you need cross connections. Like you can't launch your podcast from AI. So you need my business. But I think there's always room for or a need for human insights for
Yes,
sure.
you can. You're not going to be able to replace a human connection.
No, definitely not. Okay, I just have two questions left for you.
Okay.
What's the best advice that you've heard about podcasting that you want to share?
I would just say don't overthink it. Keep it real. Talk about your experience. And you don't always have to look like the subject matter expert, and be open to things that can evolve from that podcast.
I love that. That's a great one. Okay, last question. What's the most surprising thing that you've learned about yourself through podcasting?
Well, how much I like it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm cracking up, and I'm really surprised at how many different types of topics that I've been able to talk about that I'm really hoping land well with others and have some impact to give them, just one nugget of, this is what I learned from my 10-minute podcast, because that was the other thing that I wanted to do. And what I've read about is the whole nano learning or the micro learning. When you have, the lunch and learns, or you do as you're onboarding, you do these hour videos. It's just like people don't learn that way. And so I figured if you've got 10 minutes out of your day,
Yeah.
so I wanted to be able to provide that in that micro nano.
Yeah. And I think that works really well for your space since you are talking to leaders and leaders are busy. Leaders have teams, leaders have meetings that they're running back and forth to. So, I mean, you being in this industry for so long knew exactly what the leaders you're speaking to would need, which is a 10-minute or less podcast. So I love the nano learning. I mean, your data is looking great. So that is what your listeners were wanting. So, I mean, I love it. I love working with you, Kim. Thanks so much for joining me on the podcast cafe.
Okay, now I got to ask you, what's your coffee bev of choice?
Okay. I love an iced hazelnut latte with non-fat milk. Usually that's my go-to. I love CMP coffee, which is over here in West Seattle. I just had my 5-year party at that.
Yes,
and
sorry, I missed it.
Oh my gosh, no worries. They have a really good one. And I also started drinking almond lattes, like almond syrup. Love.
Yeah. Okay.
Love. Yes. I just started those.
that that's awesome. I love it. I just think, and I'm going to make fun. It's like, when I was in my 20s, you kids in your 20s and the non-fat stuff. I'm like, oh my God, why even bother? Get a little fat in there.
I know, right? But when I'm at home, I have an espresso. So usually I make my coffee at home. Like weekends, I'll go out and get a little treat. But no, I just use 2% at home.
Good. Well, good.
Okay.
Thanks for sharing. Thanks for having me. It's been a blast.
This was so fun. Thank you so much for joining me in the Podcast Cafe. I hope you're leaving with fresh ideas and inspiration to take your podcast to the next level. Remember, podcasting is a journey and you don't have to do it alone. I'm here to help you every step of the way. Let's connect. Be sure you follow me on Instagram at Espresso Podcast Production or visit espressopodcastproduction.com for more tips, resources, and behind-the-scenes insights. I'd love to hear about your podcasting journey. If you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling extra generous, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps more podcasters just like you find the show. Until next time, grab your coffee, keep creating, and I'll see you back here in the Podcast Cafe.